No pun intended. People hate me anyway. Greetings, everyone. We apologize for the delay. Welcome to the Monday, June 17, 2019 Board of Selectmen's meeting starting at 6:41. First order of business as we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So far off my game, I forgot to welcome everyone to the Board of Selectmen, Highway Commissioner, Cemetery Commissioners meeting. I apologize. First up, I'd like to welcome our new board member, Jason Johnson. Jason was a first-time candidate for the Board of Selectmen. Ran a good race, had a strong showing. He's not unfamiliar to people in town. He served on the Board of Health. If he came to candidates night, he's well qualified. And we certainly welcome him to fill the open seat. Welcome, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Man, a few words. And it gives me great pleasure to congratulate Paul Joseph, who was re-elected to the board. Sixth term, Paul?
Sixth time.
Sixth time, leading vote getter. As we all know, Paul, what Paul brings to the table. Again, he's not a stranger to town, not a stranger to the board, and we certainly appreciate him giving more time back to the community. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Any board members want to congratulate the new member or Mr. Joseph?
Congratulations, Paul. Congratulations, Jay. Good to have you guys up here with us.
Glad you're both still here. Glad you're still here. Glad you're here. Thank you.
Excellent. First up on the agenda, reorganization of the board. Mr. Joseph, as senior member, would you like to kick it off?
You want a nomination?
Sure.
I'm going to give you a nomination. I'm going to nominate you, Stephen, to remain as chair. And the reason I'm going to do that is I don't think I've ever seen, even when I was chair, I have not seen as efficient, fair, and functional a coordination between the chair and the town administrator, Greg, and what I anticipate will be as equally an efficient not organization, but relationship between you and the new chair, Mr. Ruda. So for that reason, I place your name in nomination.
I'll second that.
Third.
Well, I certainly, I accept the kind words, but it's a five-person board. We know we functioned short for a while. We couldn't do it without each other. And as Mr. Massey likes to say, we all kind of have a role. But it has been a good board. It was going to continue to be a good board. And I think we all mesh well, the new member and with the new town administrator. So I accept. At this time, any other nominations for chair? Hearing none, we'll close the nomination and call.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move. Well, you know what? You've accepted it. So that wasn't a motion, that was a nomination. So I'm going to move that that we record a unanimous vote for Stephen Sullivan as chairman for 2019-2020.
Aye.
No objection? I appreciate that, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you very much. This time we'll open up nominations for vice chairman. As chair, I'd like to nominate John Massey to continue if you'd like.
No, I wasn't vice chair now, but
Oh, I apologize. Apologize.
No, that's fine. I'll second that.
okay.
John, will you accept that?
Yes, I apologize.
I accept.
Could you say it a little more happily?
I accept. Thank you, Stephen, for nominating me. I had to think about it for a minute.
Any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none. It's the board's pleasure. Okay.
Chairman, I'm going to move that we record a unanimous vote for John Massey for vice chair for 2019, 2020.
Second.
Without objection? So moved.
Good.
So recorded.
Thank you. Thank you, board members.
At this time, clerk of the board, and I apologize on, misspoke last time. Mr. Sigenovich, be clerk of the board?
He was vice chairman.
I know, but
Oh.
I made a mistake. I should have withdrew. I made a mistake.
No, that's fine. John's good.
No, he's great.
He's good. Yeah, he is great. I'm sorry, what was the question?
He's a clerk.
Sure, thank you.
Nomination seconded. Any further nominations for clerk? Hearing none closed. Call to a vote.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move that it be recorded as unanimous vote for Kerry Sigenovich for clerk for 2019, 2020.
Without objection? Unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, point of information.
Joseph.
You know, people will say, well, you know, you were the top vote getter. Tradition is that you get something, you get a position, and I've made it known before, and I maintain that I'd rather not have a responsibility where I can't vote. I would rather do more damage where I am now, and I do so very happily. So I'm glad not to be one of those three officers.
Mr. Massey.
Damage. That's a good way to put it, Paul. I'm gonna add that one to your list of words that we like to hear up here. Cockamamie at all, you know.
I feel good about it.
And some other ones, too.
And some other good ones, yeah.
Back to the agenda. Acceptance of minutes, June 3rd, 2019.
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the minutes of June 3rd, 2019 as written.
Motion made.
Second.
And a second. Any corrections? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? That'll reflect unanimous. Next up, we have a Dudley Housing Authority appointment for Thomas Kaczynski, term to expire 6/30/2022. To the members of the Board of Selectmen in Dudley, Mass., I, Thomas Kaczynski, am requesting to be appointed to the Dudley Housing Authority Board, of which I am currently a member and chair of the board. Respectfully yours, Thomas Kaczynski, and for those who don't know him at home, he put AKA TK.
Oh, I know him.
What's the board's pleasure?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to appoint Thomas Kaczynski. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. We thank Mr. Kaczynski for his service. Next up, Southern Worcester County Communications Center. We need a selectman to serve on the board of directors. What's the board's pleasure? Mr. Massey?
Through the chair, to town administrator, how often do they meet? Or Paul, Mr. Joseph, you used to hold that
Monthly.
monthly?
Now, remember that the alternate, Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, please. Peter Fox has been our alternate.
Peter Fox, through the chair, Mr. Joseph, has resigned as alternate as of this week. So we're in need of a selectman to serve in that capacity, and the selectman can then choose who his or her alternate can be. We don't need to vote on an alternate, but you do need to vote on the selectman.
Well, you're automatically a representative, Mr. Chairman.
Right. That's
As TA, you're automatically a representative on the Board of Directors.
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that I'm probably the easiest in terms of scheduling, but not necessarily the easiest in terms of getting access to it on a regular basis. And that was one of the reasons why we had Peter as the alternate. And he really attended virtually all of the meetings in my stead.
So through the chair, Mr. Joseph, there's a slight change in the schedule. There was a discussion about now meeting quarterly and more if needed. But the board seems to feel that they can reduce to a quarterly meeting. So you could take that into consideration when appointing a selectman to that post.
Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chairman, how often did,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I like that ringtone.
Shut that
I like
thing off.
bagpipes.
Scotland forever.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, when do they meet? Do they meet at night, during the day?
Chief, usually during the day, right? Like 10 o'clock or something? So you may go to quarterly?
At least quarterly, maybe more, but
Necessary.
not as frequently. They've canceled the last few or changed the date around.
Well, I'd like to think about it a little bit. I know we'll have Mr. Ruda, Chief Pointer there.
Fire chief.
I need to think about it in terms of time.
I mean, Mr. Chair, that'd be something I'd be interested in doing, but it's the timing for me, the morning with work and travel. If it,
Usually 10 o'clock. Just
It's
meeting
usually
time.
10 o'clock, and now it's going to be alternated between Webster and Dudley, so it'll be convenient for both entities.
oh, that's good.
All right, why don't
When do
we,
we need to, sorry,
Yeah,
Mr.
sorry.
Chairman, when do we need to decide by on that?
By the next meeting, I would say.
I've served on that group for, I think, 5 or 6 years, with Peter as the alternate this past year. And it's important information to bring back. But the town administrator in the past, Greg, has pretty much carried the ball for us. And I think it's important that a selectman be there, because Webster will have a selectman there.
Mr. Chairman, I would agree with that if for any other reason that we don't want to lose that one vote
right,
when making a decision. The next meeting is August 8th.
all right, so we meet before then, plenty of time. The other
Can
one,
we
Yeah,
table?
yeah,
can
let's
we-
table it
Can we
and-
table that and think about it?
people can kind of internally look at their own schedule, see what we come up with. But at a minimum, we can put out there, I mean, a selectman could be an alternate, but maybe prefer an at-large. Someone in town
We
would
need
like
two
to.
people to pick, right?
Technically, we should have a selectman appointed, but then that selectman or the board can pick an alternate that
Right.
doesn't need to be voted on.
Right. I mean, it could be another selectman if we, but be a good chance of somebody in the public who would like to serve. It's a time commitment, no doubt, but right now they're looking at quarterly, then meeting is necessary, so,
I
Can I
remember,
make a suggestion? John, if you were to take it, then I would be willing to be appointed as the alternate.
you can't take the full-time seat. He's already got it as,
But it's only, you said quarterly?
right, but it's got to be a selectman. Right, you're already there as.
Oh, John Marcy, I think he was
This
talking.
John, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I'd never call you John.
No, I know.
August when?
Even over August 8th.
August 8th.
Wait, I have to jump right in.
I don't have I have to
Yeah.
check my calendar to see if I have anything now. I mean, further out, I could probably plan a little bit easier. But yeah, I mean, if you'll be the alternate, if there's somebody who can go when I can't, Mr. Chair.
Right.
What do you want?
Yeah,
Eric?
so
You
let's-
want a
let's-
second alternate?
No, I'm just.
I don't mind doing it.
With
but
John
I was involved at the beginning when we first set it up.
Right.
Why don't you have him be the main and you and I can be
Well,
alternate?
let's,
All right,
I'm gonna go home, kind of look at their thing.
all right.
We can
Can you
table
bring
it.
that back up next
We'll
time?
have you or I be the main. and
Yeah, we'll bring it back
one
up.
of an alternate,
Because then
can't
if
we?
I can do that, then Paul can be an alternate or whatever.
Right.
We can.
Not according, no,
Yeah, we'll table it
not
and,
according to the
as necessary.
All right.
board directors. the legislature.
Next up, Record Access
We're
Officer.
out.
Appoint Jonathan Reuter in his position as Town Administrator
That's correct.
to be the Records Access Officer with no term limit. My
So
only
moved.
question would be, is that normal to do no term limit
Will it be concurrent with my
employment?
employment?
Everybody okay with that language?
Yep, so moved with that language.
Motion made?
A couple of questions.
Need a
Was
second?
Greg, was that his responsibility? Okay, then I only have one question, thank you.
Right.
Second.
Second by Ms. Sigenovich. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Municipal Hearing Officer under Mass General Law, Chapter 40U, Jonathan Reuter. Same term, same conditions. Mr. Massey?
Mr. Hearing, Greg was the hearing officer as well, right? So, okay, I move that we appoint Jonathan Ruda, our municipal hearing officer under Mass General Law, Chapter 40U, to be concurrent with his
I'll second.
appointment.
Motion made in second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Chief Procurement Officer, no name attached, I assume it'd be Mr. Ruda.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Greg was that, too.
Same term. You have to get certified for that, right?
Yeah, I sent it in.
Okay. Jonathan Ruda to be Chief Procurement Officer, term to expire 6/30/2020.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made in second. Is there a date on that, just by statute? or-
It's a 3-year term. No, it's a 1-year term.
1 year?
Yeah,
Two.
okay.
Yeah, we do that every year, don't we?
I didn't know if it was like the other two.
Uh-huh.
All right, motion made in second with term to expire 6/30/2020. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Next
Mr.
up,
Chairman,
Mr. Joseph.
annual reappointments for the term to expire June 30th, 2020. To save you having to read it all, I'm going to move that we approve the following people for the following positions. Jennifer Fitzgerald, Animal Control Officer. Robert Fitzgerald, Assistant Animal Control. Ed Barron, Cable Access Coordinator. Fred Sugar, Cable Government Affairs Manager. Margaret Bussiere, Council on Aging Director. Neil Piasta, Electrical Inspector. James Jones Jr., Assistant Electrical Inspector. Jay Spau, Plumbing and Gas Inspector. And that Bill Trifone be our delegate to the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, and Hugh Cushing be an alternate to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Motion made to accept as presented for reappointments.
Second?
Second by Mr. Massey. Any questions or concerns? Hearing none, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Annual reappointment with a term to expire June 30th, 2022.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Siggins.
I'd like to make a motion that we, these annual appointments, that we approve these annual appointments with terms to expire June 30th, 2022. Constable Dave Konechny, Council on Aging Joyce Cordero, Council on Aging Janice Brady, Capital Improvement Planning Committee Maggie Levasseur, thank you. Capital Improvement Planning Committee Paul Konechny. Historical Commission Patricia Byron, and Conservation Commission Frank Gardecki.
One correction, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Joseph.
I would ask that these not be listed as annual, because this is a 3-year appointment.
Oh. So change the motion to state reappointments with term to expire June 30th, 2022, with the permission of the mover and the second.
I'll take out the annual and not say all that again.
Motion made to appoint. Hearing no objections, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. With great regret, we accept the resignation of a constable in town. Person who really enjoyed his job, but wanted to step up a little higher. Thank Jason Johnson for his service as constable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Generally, at this time, I make a motion that we send a letter to the effect thanking you for your service, but would you accept our eternal gratitude in person?
I would. Save the paper.
Thank you.
Motion to accept his resignation, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further comments? Hearing none, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
So, Mr. Administrator, we put that out now on cable access? We have a vacancy, or is it
I think it's already posted, but we'll double
already
check that,
posted?
Mr. Chairman.
Perfect. Next up, public comments, citizens' comments. Anyone wishing to be heard not on the agenda tonight? Hearing none. Town Administrator report. Mr. Ruda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Two of them.
As my transition continues, I had the opportunity over the past 2 weeks to meet with the principal assessor, the town clerk, and the assistant town clerk, the building inspector and assistant building inspector, and the town planner, and I have the library director scheduled for next week. Few items of note. Last agenda, we were talking about our recycling contract. There were some discrepancies that we were working through. I've had several conversations with Casella regarding the price increases for services at the recycling center. I've been able to negotiate an adjustment in the bill, and Casella has agreed to lock in their pricing through the end of the contract. The streetlight project. The streetlight project has begun. The highway superintendent has been coordinating the project directly with Cavello Construction. They're a subcontractor to Tanco. And the police chief has been working with Cavello to keep track of traffic impacts and posting construction schedules on social media, which we've been reposting on our town Facebook page to advise the public and to minimize the inconvenience. I think today we were working on Center Road in Dresser Hill, Chief? Yeah.
Hey, Jonathan, Mr. Chairman, how is it going so far? Did they run into anything? I mean, they're all tested and lit up, and we'll find out tonight in those areas?
No problem now.
Okay.
Yeah, they're about halfway through.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Sorry, go ahead, Jonathan.
So, on a side note, I spoke with Mr. Johnson earlier today, and he had some communication with a resident who was concerned about a business owner that was concerned about a streetlight that had been out for almost 2 years. And so the explanation is certainly thanking the community for their patience, but I think there was some hesitancy to begin spending money on a project that had been approved to go ahead and replace everything all at once. So I think that was the reason that there was a little bit of hesitancy. Perhaps that wasn't communicated correctly, but that's the reason for it. And I would say that business owner can expect to see a brand new street light in short order.
I think I've heard from that business owner as well at some point. Down there. Yeah.
In terms of our fire building project, I attended the construction meeting at the Fire Station Committee last Friday. The building is coming along nicely, but the budget's on track, and with the help of the Treasurer's Office, I was able to address an issue regarding insurance that seemed to elude us for a while. There was an article that was passed on the Springtown warrant relative to an easement for the owners of the Dudley Post Office property. I've engaged the architect. We're going to use the same surveyor that we used on the project to get that easement executed, and that should be completed within the timeline of the project.
Mr. Chairman, sometimes you'll learn, Mr. Ruda, that you can't leave some topics partly covered without giving an explanation. What was the issue regarding insurance?
We needed proof of insurance, builder's insurance. And for some reason, they had been waiting for it, and I was able to provide the proof. Sometimes I intentionally leave a topic uncovered to allow other people to save face.
Okay.
And in this case, that's exactly the case.
Just so you know, when you say that there was an issue regarding insurance, which I appreciate knowing, I would really like to know what the issue was as part of the report. And I'm sure people would like to know, wait a minute, what was the issue regarding insurance? Can we not get it? You know? Don't leave us hanging,
Okay.
okay?
Sometimes publicly maybe I'll tell you in advance if I don't want to publicly, bring something up like that.
I'm glad you got both those things ironed out.
I'm glad you brought it to everyone's
With the
attention.
post office.
Mr. Massey?
Well, on a positive note on that, I mean, just with all election time and a lot of people driving by the fire station every day, I've had people now that it's really coming together, the whole front of it, people are kind of getting excited about seeing it and what it actually looked and how quick it's coming together. So I just wanted to pass that along.
With those garage door bays, Mr. Chairman, when you just following up on that train of thought, it's hard to imagine that those trucks fit into that side of the building. Now that they're just windows and the garage bay doors are gone,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
And then the 2019 right in the center,
Yeah,
it just
looks
really
nice.
I like that.
really stands
Now,
out.
someone asked me what was going to happen with the old signs that were over each of the doorways, that I think they were white wood painted with black letters, I think, that said what vehicle was in each doorway. Does anybody know what's gonna happen to those signs? 'Cause I
Yeah.
couldn't answer the
Did
question.
that come up last?
Yeah, the chief at the last meeting, I said, he's either gonna display them inside the building
Okay.
in like a nice setting, or make
Okay,
a
all right.
display. So he's gonna keep them.
Yeah, I heard him say
Yeah.
that, but I didn't know exactly what to tell the people.
Yeah, it's
I
gonna
must
be,
have brought the folder
I
back
told them that they
into
were
my
gonna be
office
preserved.
before you
Good.
put it. That's fine. No, I just want to make sure they got it.
Thank you.
I asked the Water and Sewer Commissioners to review the most current job description of the Water and Sewer Administrative Assistant, because there's now a vacancy in that department with the election of the new town clerk. They voted to approve the existing job description with only some minor changes. I've included a copy of the job description in your folders. The changes outlined are in bold. They've also expressed, the Water and Sewer Commissioners, a desire to post the job internally for 14 days and to proceed with hiring without delay. I know it's gone through personnel already, to put personnel on board. There's no action required from the Board of Selectmen. This is strictly informational at this point.
Mr. Marcy.
Mr. Town Administrator, you skipped over the solar pilot agreement. Are we gonna just talk about that after, during the, new business stuff? Or the,
Yeah, I
or the old
intentionally
business, I'm
skipped that
sorry.
over, Mr. Marcy. The last line there is, I'll review it under tonight's agenda, 13B.
Sorry, nitpicky. OCD.
Mr. Chairman, if you recall, we received a $25,000 Community Compact grant. I believe you were there for the award a few years ago. At that time, my predecessor hired an independent firm to conduct the work. I've re-engaged that firm, and that work is scheduled to begin after the 4th of July. We're going to have our initial meeting to talk more about the scope of the project. I have the documentation that outlines the scope of the project. If anybody's interested in seeing that, I'll send it.
So you were, Mr. Chairman, you were able to negotiate an extension understanding with them?
With Department of Revenue, yes.
Good, thank you.
We have an extension to December 31st this year, which should give us plenty of time.
Excellent.
And finally, Mr. Chairman, our surplus vehicles, which has been something I think we've been, as a board, trying to wrangle in for a while. We're in the process, this kind of follows the previous, where we're looking at a capital improvement plan, a townwide capital improvement plan. We've been trying to wrangle in what we had for surplus and actually surplus or dispose of those vehicles for quite some time now. So I've asked all departments to weigh in to make sure we're not missing any surplus vehicles. We're going to try to do it all at once and find the correct method to dispose of those, whether it's disposal or out for bid. I'm still researching the townwide policy for disposal of those vehicles, so I hope to get that in process by July 1st.
So we'll be able to get rid of that used vehicle lot up above where the kids play?
They're used to it.
I don't know, my higher priority is to get rid of the selectmen's drawers in the office or the surplus vehicles, but we're going to get rid of both of them, if I have anything to say about it. In falling in line with that, I've asked, I actually began working last week with the police chief about setting par levels for the fleet, for his fleet and for all town fleets, so that we can make sure that we're routinely, as we purchase new vehicles, we're disposing of the old ones that are of no longer of any value to the town. So we're going to do that for all departments. And that concludes my report.
Any questions of the town administrator?
Good job reviving that grant from 2017.
Yeah.
Not sure what happened there, but glad we're getting that in the end.
I remember going to that presentation. We went to the Southbridge Town Hall, myself, Greg, somebody else, I can't remember who it was. No, I got the award from the Lieutenant Governor, and it completely fell off the face of the earth, and I echo Kerry's sentiments. I'd like to see that really come into play.
I think it's an important project, Mr. Chairman.
Right. Perfect.
Thank you, Jay.
Around town, focus on local businesses. I know we keep saying it, but we are gonna crank that back up.
Are we gonna bring that fellow in? Have you been in touch with him?
You said the
Michelle?
29th? July 29th, you want
Yeah.
to?
That's the fellow from Biz down at Tinsley Square.
Yeah. License and permits, we have none.
Next guy.
Public hearing, we have two. I'm just gonna take them out of order for just procedural purposes. Second one is Class 2 license, second-hand motor vehicle, Amar Abdolki, doing business as Tony's Auto Sales. Board of Selectmen will hold a hearing on Monday, June 17, 2019, at 6:35 at the Dudley Municipal Complex, 71 West Main Street, in the Veterans Memorial Hall, 321A, for the purpose to act on an application for a Class 2 second-hand motor vehicle license from Amar Abdolki, DBA Tony's Auto Sales, located at 121 West Main Street. I declare the hearing open. At this time, we will, 7:12. At
Open
7:12.
at what time?
7:12,
7-Eleven.
7:11.
Thank you.
At this time, we will continue the public hearing to our next meeting at the request of the applicant.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. The application is not ready to go forward yet.
Okay, so this way it's, the hearing is open, continued. So those of you at home that are watching it, you will not get re-notified as abutters. If you deem it necessary to appear, please come to our next meeting or follow along on our website if there's any other issues. Next up, we have a public hearing for National Grid, joint poll hearing. I'm just looking for the notice. So I'll have the official notice. National Grid and Verizon New England request permission to locate pole wires and fixtures, including necessary sustaining, protecting fixtures along and across the following public way: Ramshorn Road. National Grid to install a one joint-owned pole on Ramshorn. National Grid to install a joint-owned pole and anchor across from the existing pole at pole 7 on Ramshorn Road due to road widening. I declare this public hearing open at 7:12. Good evening.
How y'all doing?
Just state your name for the record, please, and
Lauren Napolitano from National Grid.
nice to meet you.
Thank
Could I
you.
ask you to speak up, even though I've got my hearing aids on?
Sorry, I'll try to speak up. I'm a low talker.
Thank you.
Sometimes slide that over a little bit too. Helps, yeah.
Good?
Yes.
Okay.
So what do we have here tonight?
So, like you said, we're installing a joint-owned pole and anchor across from the existing pole on Ramshorn. But I am going to go ahead and state that the road widening is a typo. I was speaking to Vincent about it before the meeting started, and he's the one who called in the work request and said that wasn't a part of his original request. So I'll just say that that is a typo.
Well, I was reading it. I also talked to the interim superintendent last week, and there was some slight concern about the language. Nothing major.
We don't make those calls, so that'd be up to y'all.
Well, we act with our full-time people, and if Vinnie's okay with it, I think the rest of us are.
Yeah, it's basically a, Mr. Chairman, it's basically a guy wire going across the street into an old tree that's dead. I want to remove the tree, but before I can do that, they have to set a new pole and run the guy wire into that pole and then anchor it before I can take the old tree out.
Right, matter of fact, at the parade this year, somebody made mention about that. That's right at the,
Yes.
with the police chief, I forget who it was. Somebody said something that you wanted to take it down, but it was, that tree was obviously, it was a great idea 50 years ago. I don't know about now.
There is a couple more in the process too, but this is the only one that came up for tonight, so.
Perfect. Mr. Administrator, any questions, concerns from the town?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Board members, any questions or comments?
Yeah,
Mr. Joseph?
road widening of Ramshorn or Corbett?
There's no road widening at all,
Typo.
typo.
Yeah, they weren't,
Okay.
wasn't supposed to be in there,
I'm just referring to this letter
right?
signed by the engineering department and the manager right away, National Grid. On the second paragraph on Ramshorn Road, It specifically refers to road widening.
Yes, sir. I'm from the engineering department, and we will not be widening any roads, and have not been notified of any road widening from the Department of Transportation.
Okey dokey.
Right, I read it because it was in there. Like I said, I talked to Vinnie, and I knew there was a question with the wording, but all our fears were allayed. Any other questions for the applicant or the highway superintendent? Mr. Massey?
This sounds like something we really need to do, right? Because, so the pole in the middle is kind of, all right,
Well, it's the tree that the pole is guide to.
yes.
It still needs support, so we have to install a second pole, or called a stub pole, to support that pole 7, I believe.
Yes, pole 7.
Yep, pole 7.
And before we close the public hearing, anybody that's paying attention at home usually knows right about now, myself or Mr. Joseph, begin the questions about double poles. We received an email from our contact person, Mr. Shaughnessy,
Yes,
informing us that National Grid is no longer responsible for any of the double poles. They have cleared their issues. We now have to deal with
Verizon?
or Charter.
not Charter, it'd be Verizon.
Verizon, but they have
Yes,
to,
so-
Charter would have to move their stuff too, right?
Yes, once Verizon, so it goes in order from top to bottom.
Right.
So once we get the pole installed, we'll transfer our lines, and then the other utilities can come and transfer theirs.
Right,
Well,
but,
that's most unfortunate,
yes.
because I'm not sure that we have a wedge to use or a hammer when it comes to Verizon. So I'm not sure how we can get them to get up off of their corporate duff
Well,
and,
that's a
get those wires moved.
That's a good question. I know that personally, in my town, it took me a while to get some lines moved that I needed moved, and a double pole issue on my entire street. But since we took over ownership of installing all of the poles, they took ownership of removing. So yeah, it is kind of up to them. I was going to give Vincent a number for their engineering department, but that's all I can say about that, unfortunately.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask that at our next meeting, we have a representative of Verizon come in to meet with us on this topic?
I think that's a reasonable request.
Been a while since they've been there, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Massey?
By the way, I was gonna make a motion that Paul have his thing about the double poles, if he wasn't going to talk about them, so just wanted to say that. But you guys do coordinate that though, right? I mean, if we,
Yes, what we do is we need to install a pole and have one removed, we'll send them a work order,
yeah.
and then it's up to them to get it done.
So do we
On
have
their
any,
timeframe.
so that's a really great point. Do we have any open work orders or a report that we could, say this number, where does that stand with Verizon? Do they have a portal or a?
Well, I don't think that we would be able to go and look and see if y'all had any more double poles, and what those orders were.
Okay.
But I can talk to Mr. Shaughnessy, and see if he has any ideas about that. And then also, again, I can forward on the engineering number for Verizon. When I have questions, that's who I call.
Okay. That would be great, because if we, if at least if we had specific information for an ask to Mr. Shaughnessy or to Verizon in general,
Right.
or to Verizon, right, to say, what's the status of 1, 2, 3
Right.
case,
Do we have any
And there is a work order number to each job that we send through, but I'll talk to Mr. Shaughnessy
Maybe
tomorrow.
there's a report you guys can run with or something in your system that will have a list of those?
I'm trying to think if there's a way to do that, but again, I'll talk to Mr. Shaughnessy tomorrow and see if I can get something like that for y'all.
That's my operations background, right? Give me something I can follow up on and just come on,
Yeah.
let's go.
I hear you.
So, thank you.
Sure.
Helpful.
Any further questions for the applicant or the superintendent? Hearing none, public hearing closed, 7:20.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Joseph?
I'm going to move that we grant the poll hearing, the joint poll hearing as presented in our agenda under public hearings, item 12A.
Motion made
Second.
and seconded. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thank you
Yes,
for your
sir.
information, too.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
that's,
We've been in
actually,
this,
that's probably the most that we've actually heard. There's actually work order numbers, and
Yeah.
we never knew that, so.
we've been in this for a while.
Yeah.
I'm here to answer questions, so if y'all need anything,
You
let
saw
me
that
know.
the joke is that, you know, every time we have a new representative, you know, gets the Mr. Joseph treatment. And,
Yeah, I was a little worried about that when I was
No.
sitting there. I was like,
No.
oh, I don't know if I want to go up there now.
No,
But I think we got it all right.
no, we have, no, like I said, if we had some next steps, then we can kind of
Those are my
figure it out.
my stickers.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
What's my new ones? Two.
Through the chair.
Oh, Mr.
Is there
Paletta.
an area that there's double poles an issue right
One
now?
for us,
Well, we had a-
one for Verizon, one for.
We have an open list,
There's
right?
there's a list that recently was updated and
Here's the
sent
list,
out. You
yeah.
can get it from town administrator.
I know, not sticking up for them, but I know Verizon's been in town taking a lot down
Oh, good.
past 2 weeks.
Yeah, because I know there was a list with a certain amount on them.
All the phones were out at the schools last week, so Verizon.
That's what it
Not that
was.
he has nothing to do, he has plenty to do, but I would ask that, in light of what you just said, Vinnie, could we have the town administrator check and just give us an update on what we have for double poles?
It was in that last email that went out.
It was this one.
It's in
right
here.
It's
Yeah,
in
I know
here.
they were
So in
doing
this
work
one?
across
It's in here.
the street from Farmer Tim's
Oh,
last week on double poles.
yeah, there's a list, Paul, at the end of the public hearing application. According to this, we're down to about, I'm not gonna count, maybe 14, 15?
But do these things
Maybe
make
19?
babies during the night? Where did we get all those double poles?
They were always there, we just didn't know about them.
Holy smokes.
Some of them are kind of remote, I think, if you look. They're not right on West Main. The ones on West Main, well, they took care of the one on Brandon when the guy sideswiped it with his car because it was in the right of way.
Right.
That's
There's
pretty
three.
fast.
There's 3 of them.
Next up on the agenda, the old business, set new compensation amount regarding, I think that's not giving Michelle enough credit regarding the Board of Selectmen / Town Administrator, Administrative Assistant, plus all the other functions that Michelle performs. Mr. Ruda.
Mr. Chairman, I'm asking I appreciate the board,
Goes with that.
their patience for granting me another couple of weeks to take a look at this. What I'm asking for you to do is to act on Greg's memo,
There's only two.
dated May 29th, 2019. And then under new business, I'd like to
There's no sticky.
give you a copy of Michelle's updated job description. This position has been previously approved and budgeted at town meeting.
Well, I know
Be effective July 1st.
I know everybody's always, rightly so, concerned with making sure the job descriptions are accurate, and I certainly think this new document probably more accurately reflects what Michelle's been doing for Michelle, 10 years, 12 years? How long you been in our office?
11.
11 years. 10, 12, that's close. And I certainly
You got 3.
can't begin to say enough. Anybody who deals with anything in the town knows they're greeted everywhere with professionalism, but Michelle really goes above and beyond to make sure the selectmen and the town administrator are represented well, and we stay informed of what we need to stay informed. So I thank the administrator for working with the personnel board to continue the process that was started in spring. Any further comments?
Do you need a
I'm
motion?
sorry, I was signing all those papers.
I
We
don't,
do need a motion.
for the new job description?
No, for the, to vote on the memo that the previous town administrator gave you.
Even though it's already set, we just have to approve it.
She is your employee.
Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve that memo by the previous town administrator, setting a new compensation amount and job description to Board of Selectmen administrative, everything.
Again, I was reading, I apologize, is she gonna stay as secretary, or is she gonna be administrative assistant?
She's an administrative secretary, OAS 6, the highest classified.
Okay,
admin
that's
that we
all
have.
squared away with personnel?
Correct.
Thank you.
Motion made,
Second?
second by Mr. Joseph. Any further questions or concerns? Hearing none.
Mr. Chairman, perhaps because you're voting on it, we should add in that she's now going to be a 39-hour-a-week employee instead of the
35.
35 that we've been doing, because
She works more than 35
she,
hours.
yes.
35, she got that by Wednesday. Not
You're
the,
paying her all that money for only 35 hours a week?
no, we've been
All
paying her.
that money.
No,
All
paying
that, did you say all that money?
all that little bit of money from 45 hours a week.
So maybe we should add that into the motion, Mr.
Let the
Chairman.
motion reflect, if the mover in a second, that the position is now a 39-hour-a-week position.
Good.
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Any further questions or concerns? Hearing none, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Shall we thank you for staying and
Very deserved.
not leaving us?
Very well deserved, very much deserved.
Next up is a request from Nextamp Dudley Solar LLC to amend their pilot agreement. I believe the town administrator has some information you may want to share concerning this issue.
Again, thanks for holding on this, Mr. Chairman, from the last meeting. In your packets, I have 3 documents that I need you to refer to as I go through this. The first one is just a copy of an email string, Town Administrator, Town of Dudley.
Do we have anybody, Mr. Chair, sorry, do we have anybody from Nexamp here, or do we need them?
I don't believe we do. So what's first, this one?
Kind of a big ask, you know, an ask.
What's first, this one?
No, this
We're in the
one.
right vicinity?
This is the first. one.
Correct.
This one first. The
So
email
that
is-
established that they were requesting a change, a decrease in the pilot agreement that we signed. That came in at the end of Greg's tenure. So that's why I requested a chance to take a look at it. Part of that packet is this agreement for payment in lieu of taxes. It's the overall agreement that we've signed. It's dated October 19th, 2015. If you go to page 2 of that agreement,
This one? June 20th?
yeah, that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Page 2 of that agreement, at the bottom of the page, under section 2.
Oh, that sentence goes over to the next page?
Section 2, page 2, bottom of the page.
Less than-
Improvements, additions, and retirements is the heading.
Right,
Yeah.
I got it. It goes to the next page.
So under section 2, improvements, additions, and retirements, the last sentence of section 2 is, to the extent that C, the capacity of the project is less than 2.6 megawatts DC on the completion date due to permitting restrictions, or D, developer reduces the capacity of the project on or after the completion date, the remaining payments in lieu of taxes for real and personal property attributable to the project will be decreased to the extent and as described in paragraph 3. So my first question to town council was, can they decrease the amount of the pilot agreement? And that section provides your answer. The answer is yes, they can. That's what we signed up for. So they're proposing, the overall project was a 2.6 kilowatt project. They're proposing to amend that to 2.40768. It's not a huge reduction, but it is a reduction.
Mr. Massey?
Mr. Town Administrator, why, why so specific? I mean, they're calculating the
Megawatts.
megawatts.
Yes.
I would assume it must have to do with their credits, whatever they're getting from the state, right?
It has to do with their credits, and
They must have to be specific for their license.
And his legal, Mr. Chair, through the chair, has legal reviewed this?
legal has reviewed it, and they'd offered, if you look at the third page that I've included where it says First Amendment to the agreement and payment in lieu of taxes. It's been marked up by our legal counsel.
Mr. Sigenovich.
Question, Mr. Administrator, is there a way we can verify this?
My question.
I mean, I'm just thinking, is there like a meter somewhere, like
That's a
when
great
you get
question.
gas?
They provide us with regular reports.
Have they provided
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
And, so they provided that, we can verify that. Are they up to date with all of their payments?
Yes, they are up to date with their payments. However, in order for this to go through, they had to provide us with a completion date. When they executed the contract, they didn't do it. They provided us, we asked them for the completion date. They just recently provided it on Friday. So the suggestion and all this markup from town council is essentially, they're not gonna go back and retroactively, we're not returning any money to them, obviously. We may have been liable to return some money if we didn't catch this, but we're not gonna do that. We're proposing that in August of 2019, which represents the third year of the billing cycle, we begin the adjustment according to the contract, because they have now only recently provided us with the completion date. So going forward, we would propose that August 29 would be the first reduction in the pilot payment.
Two questions.
Yes, Mr. Joseph.
One, does this language, does this amendment change the language in terms of further reductions?
It does not.
Does this language provide for an increase in annual payments, not per kilowatt hour, but increase due to increased outage or production? Does the original contract contain language that this does not interfere with?
Yes, it doesn't, it contains language, the original contract contains language, and we went over this afternoon, that provides for an increase if production is increased in the.
And do they say why they reduce their production by, what is it, 952 or 2,952, whatever the hell it is? Why the reduction in production?
I didn't get that far, Mr. Joseph.
See, I'd like to know why. If the answer is that they simply did not put in an appropriate number of solar panels to meet the terms of the original agreement, then as far as I'm concerned, they're up a creek without a paddle. But if for some reason, through no fault of their own, meaning an unwillful reduction, then okay, I can see us negotiating this. But what if they just didn't put in enough panels, knowing that they were not going to be able to meet the original terms of the agreement? I don't know the answer, but I'm asking.
So I was close to asking, I was asked a similar question. And the answer is that we signed that we would accept the reduction. So whether they put in one panel or 100 panels, we signed that we would accept the reduction without contingency.
That was council's response?
Correct,
Our council.
correct.
Right, Mr. Massey?
I mean, it could be something, I mean, just the other projects I've worked in the past where they, they've kind of scoped it out, and there's a contingencies and everything like that, where their models say that they need X number of panels, and, it's close, but it's still not an exact science, I think.
Well, it's rained for the last 6 months. so-
Yeah, so I don't know if it was an on-purpose thing. Maybe it's a design.
I don't know, but I'm
Could be a
not.
design flaw. I don't
Yeah,
know.
like you, I'm not going to speculate.
know.
I just want to know the answer.
Yeah, we can.
Why are they producing less than what they
Yeah, we should ask that question.
clearly had included in their business plan?
Because, yeah, sorry.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Johnson?
His first question, here he is.
Take note.
Might be a two-part question. First of all, what kind of language are we going to protect ourselves in the future to prevent massive reductions in the payments to the town on future contracts.
Good question, because council, I don't know if it was KP, I don't think it was previous council.
No, it wasn't KP.
Previous on.
Previous council reviewed it and recommended we adopt it. There's no other way we would have done it. So maybe the new council may have made a different recommendation. That's an excellent question.
And second of all, someone that's made some engineering estimates inaccurately on occasion, could we adjust language in the future to put a limit on how far this could go down in the few areas left to have these debates?
So I guess the next question, Mr. Administrator and other
Sorry,
board
good
members,
question.
is there an escalator clause in there? If they somehow produce more, I mean, I don't know if they can, right? Could
Yeah,
they
the
produce more?
sentence, Mr. Chairman, that I read to you was preceded by escalation. If they produce more, they pay more.
Oh, okay.
To the extent that the capacity of the project exceeds 2.6 on the completion date, or is increased by developer after the completion date, the remaining payments in lieu of taxes for real and personal property attributable to the project will be increased as described in paragraph 3.
I see. So we're protected for,
If they make more, we get more.
right, but we just caught a little bit off guard with the make
Correct.
less, get less. Mr. Massey?
But Jay's point was perfect. What keeps them from coming back next year and doing the same thing? I mean, is this amendment gonna say you get one shot at it, or is it every year they can, oh, sorry, it rained for another 6 months, we'll own it to 2.0? What? Yeah, we budget for that money, so that's why I'm asking. I mean, do we know?
Are you asking the question if, can we change the existing contract?
Oh, well, what if they come back, I think that's what he was asking, right? What if they come back next year and say, we have another reduction, and,
We would have to probably try to renegotiate a new contract.
I'd like to do it in this
As I read the
amendment.
contract, Mr.
Sorry.
Chairman, they can come back theoretically anytime they want, unless we do the same thing that they requested, which is to amend the contract.
Right, which is, can we put it in here
Yeah, we do that now.
once,
Limit their
Before my
right to
time.
come back.
while it's open?
Before my time.
While the contract's open, that's the time to dump that stuff in,
So I guess the question would be,
especially as someone who's made mistakes.
we don't need to vote on this tonight, right? Or do we?
Not an exact.
No, we don't have to vote on it. They're asking us. We're not under the gun for anything.
All right, so I guess the questions would be, Mr. Massey's, can they keep coming back? Or
Well, it's Mr. Johnson's.
sorry. And then Mr. Paul's question about the reduction.
Why?
Yeah, the
Right.
why.
The why. Maybe we can find out why they're not producing as much. Yeah, but still involved in the comments.
So,
So I'm just saying, anybody else that wants to add questions for the administrator, now would be the time. Well, you had the contract question.
Oh.
Mr. Siganovich,
This was 2015, correct?
but it was amended in 16.
Okay. That's why it looks a little familiar to me. It's before my time.
but they completed the work in 2017
Right.
and notified
Farley
us in
Road.
June of 2019, this year,
Right.
that they were going to be short. Can I ask a question as an offshoot? I know, John, you got another one too. But where are we with the landfill solar array? Do we have any, have we awarded a bid on that?
So we got
Take a-
Someone go like this if we have, and like that if we haven't, please?
We have to reengage that contractor as well, Mr. Joseph. We have to reengage that contractor as
They
well.
came in.
All right, because if we don't have a contract on that, let us learn from this contract.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mr.
And if you
Massey.
decide to put some on the roof, too.
Yeah.
When we first
Exactly.
started
They should
this, and I'm glad we're having this discussion, when we first started the 13B, I'm like, is there anybody from Nexamp here? I mean, maybe we, like Verizon or National Grid, get them in here, answer these questions.
They're not a small company, Nick.
No, but I mean, they must have a local representative or something, right?
I think too, looking at the two different agreements, and,
Or am I splitting hairs? What do you guys?
no, I don't think you are. I think as we look at the two agreements, wasn't there a change of ownership, or the one company bought the other company? I don't think,
West Dudley. That's
yeah,
the West
oh, that was West Dudley, not this one?
Oh, yeah, a Canadian company, yeah.
Because it went from
Mr.
Dudley
Chair.
Solar LLC to Farley Road LLC, unless these are separate.
So does,
Mr. Chairman, can I make a suggestion that we don't have anybody from Nexamp come in anytime soon until we've negotiated outside the public eye?
Yeah, that's probably better.
Probably fair.
Try to get our answers to the generic,
yeah, let's just get answers first before
Yeah.
we
to the non-financial questions.
stake
Why
positions.
the output off?
I just don't want to get into a situation where we have our attorney, their attorneys going back and forth, and then their attorneys show up and we...
Yeah.
Oh,
Now,
so
has
here I
this-
am making comments on TV, yeah, right.
The $2.50 an
God.
hour.
Thank you, Mr. Town Administrator.
Gun club.
Mrs. Hurst.
Do we,
Kathy,
is this signed already? Is this good?
no, we have to sign it tonight.
No, we
So
don't.
we do have to take a vote tonight?
Well, you could take a vote, could not take a vote. You could authorize me to sign it when everybody's happy with it, or we could bring it to another meeting. I know there's some sense of urgency on their side, and I'm sure it's going to hold up our payments if we don't get it done, but...
Considering the nature of the topic and discussions the last couple of years, I would, at this time, not want to put you on the hook, but rather have it be something that the board would vote on.
And I would like to see the suggestions about how many times they can lower it, or
Jay, that was the best
how much they
thing.
could lower, see if we can incorporate that into an amendment to bring both
Yeah.
sides to an, amiable for both sides conclusion, at least. I mean, maybe we can't,
We'll see.
but there's only one way to find out.
What's to stop them from unplugging all of them and just saying, yep, and
Yeah,
that's not right.
or whatever the case may be. Mrs. Hurst.
Hi, Kathy Hurst, Camelot Circle. In regard to what you're talking about lowering the amounts that you're getting from the solar panels, solar farms, I know that, I don't have all the research with me, but I did pull up something. I know that I have heard that solar panels, anybody that has them, even on their roof or whatever, that in general, they lose about 5% efficiency each year over a 20-year period. That's why they have a 20-year to 25-year lifespan. And so if you're saying, do you think that it's going to go up in the future and the payment will go up? I don't know. I would think that they probably continue to have these decreasing energy. I'll just read to you, this is from 2012, and it was all from 2019 also. This was just in bigger print, so I could read it. According to a 2012 study by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, the average degradation rate for panels is between 0.5% to 8% per year. Degradation rate is the rate at which solar panels lose efficiency over time. A panel with a degradation rate of 1% per year will be 10% less efficient after 10 years. So depending on the quality of the solar panel, but I guess that's the nature of the beast. They do lose the power. I know that we've had rain, and that's part of the problem, but I think in general, they're going to decrease over time.
Mr. Joseph.
Yeah, I want to add to that a little bit. Simply that reducing it once is an act. Reducing it twice is a pattern. So, a pattern. So we need to keep an eye on reduction and question their business practices if they have to reduce it 2 years in a row, or even 2 out of 3 years.
And we need to, through the administrator, to find out exactly what they're basing their reduction on. Is it degradation of material, the newer panels may be more efficient than the 2012 study, but if there is some, it's probably like your home furnace. I mean, everything wears out eventually. My hip.
Right?
Mr. Massey.
No, but no, it's a really good point, because the contract is written in a way where it's favorable to them, because otherwise they've signed up for a certain number of megawatts, and if they can't meet that in year 18, they have to find a way to make that power, whether it's replacing panels, and they don't want to do that. So this is sort of one of these things that's how they can get out of doing that. So through the chair to the town administrator, I mean, as we kind of talk to legal about this at some point, to maybe tie all these things while the contract is open, right? But, so what One more. What is legal's position on, oh, Mary wants to
Oh,
talk
just
to.
yeah, she can come up and talk, just finish.
So, is that, he's got quite a few things, Jonathan has quite a few things he's gotta do on this.
No, I don't mean to like
Sure.
pig pile on
He's
it.
okay on all of it.
No, no, I mean, that's why I think our best course of action tonight is just to sit on the information.
Yep.
Sit on the information and wait for more details. Ms. Sansucci.
Yes, Mary Sansucci, Ramshorn Road. Through the chair, I'd like to address Mr. Ruda. When you first made your remarks and were reading from that contract, did you say that initially it was a 2.4,
No, I said in
2.6?
2.6 net.
Okay. Well, I have a press release from Nexamp. It's dated August 24th, 2017, and they're stating right here that Nexamp completes a 2.4 megawatt community solar project in Dudley, Mass. So how could it say that on the contract when they're saying that it was only 2.4? That's a real discrepancy.
That might be the why. Maybe it's an
Oh.
oops on their
Did
part.
you say 2.4?
You can,
Did you say,
It could very well be.
Could be an oops.
Mary, did you say 2.4 in their press release?
Yeah, you've got a press
Well,
release.
that's the number they were working off,
Samples
of
vote.
2.4.
That's the one we went down to.
Is it,
Not the
is it the,
2.6, it's in the contract.
so that's yours. But the other thing is,
is that the same project? 'Cause it's
That's what I'm looking up now.
aren't you establishing a precedent? We have a lot
Ever-
of pilot programs in Dudley.
It's not a
Evergreen Farm?
question of letting him get away with it. We're following,
Evergreen Farm?
I'm gonna wait till you have a
Farm
civil
is Dudley
conversation.
South, with Dudley Oxford Road.
So that's a different one.
That's Jacobson's land.
So that's different?
Yeah, that's a different one.
Wait, this is Farley Road, I thought.
Right.
Wait,
Farley.
This one's Farley Road, and
I don't even have that one. You're looking at a different one. That's,
there's two of them.
oh, it's stuck together.
So, Mr.
Hang
Chairman,
on, I don't have that one.
when we're ready,
Which one is this referring to?
This one, the one we're talking about, correct me?
Dudley Oxford Road is the
So-
one we're talking about, Mr.
So it's
Chairman.
not, just Farley Road LLC, that's something different? Or is it the same company?
Ramshorn, Corbin, and Dudley Oxford Road.
You may have you have
Oh, the Easterbrook Farm.
another one in your packet for some reason, Mr. Chairman. That doesn't apply here.
gentlemen,
It
could I
should say on the
This is the
front,
Easterbrook
Dudley
Farm
Solar
we're talking about.
LLC.
Nexamp is the Easterbrook Farm. They're the
So
solar.
this is different.
It says Evergreen Farm. Do they mean Easterbrook?
Yeah, it's Evergreen.
Used to be called everything.
Could I suggest we simply ask the question why, and then we'll move on from there when we get some data? But Mary just asked a question that should not go unanswered. And she said, why are we letting him get away with this? Well, the answer is twofold. One is town council has advised us, and it's right there in the contract language, and number three, that they can reduce it according to the terms of the contract. However, I will say that it's my experience, I hope others believe it, that this board, as it's constituted and as it has been, you can fool us once. Don't try to do it twice.
Yeah, but how many other contracts do you have out there? How many other contracts do you have out there?
Well,
They're
how
all
many-
pilots, aren't they?
Two
Yeah,
more.
they're all pilots except the one that we have to negotiate for the landfill.
Okay.
That's still to be determined.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the good thing is,
Can I give this to Jonathan?
as far as I know, there was foresight for up and down in the contract. Right now, we're feeling the negative effect of a down.
Yep.
But my first question, which you answered, we're also protected if, for whatever reason, it was up. So I'm sure that question was asked when we approved these pilot agreements. I mean, I would trust the town administrator and council at the time, and we're protected for both ends of the scale. And right now, we're on the weighted end, so,
Yeah, you're right.
But
but I think,
Mr. Chairman, I just want to remind everyone that the technology used to create electricity from solar is not as predictable as burning oil, coal, or those energy sources. So I have solar at my house, and the contract's written in a way that allows for the fluctuation within limits. And if the limits are met, then there's language that covers that. So it is possible to have the language that covers that and still protect the town. On the flip side of that coin is, you know, other than permission, I'm not sure, you know, what value the town created for these companies. So to be careful about the demands of a contract going above and beyond what's normally seen out in that industry would be probably problematic for us.
Mr. Massey?
Agreed. I mean, it's on one of those things, since this was a real, like, you know, corporate agreement, I mean, we should assume positive intent. You guys have heard me say that a few hundred times, that there wasn't anything nefarious. So we just need the information.
Right, we need to find out why.
We need the why.
And again,
We need the why.
Again, we need to, as someone brought up, figure out how many reductions can be granted.
That's probably the most important thing,
And-
right?
and-
He said.
And their flip side, they're gonna, if they were to produce more, they'd probably want to be protected about increases.
Well, that's what'll happen with the contract when we asked for that.
Right, so I think now's the time to ask, because if we have to insert a clause like that, you can only come back every 5 years, for example, just making up a number.
Right.
You know, now would be our time to, as someone said, to get a get. You all good with that?
Yes, sir.
Public good? Perfect.
But-
Mr.
Just one more note, I mean, I know, again, just full transparency from me and this board is, you know, the public's been pretty vocal about these solar projects, and this one we're kind of stuck with. So let's make it as best as we can for the town, get stuff out of it for, you know, benefit, value, you know, while we have it, so.
To be fair, like, we were all, most of us were here, but I think we all thought we did at the
Right, I
time.
mean, Mr. Chairman, if you don't want to be stuck with a contract, we won't waste our time negotiating them anymore. It's as simple as that.
Right, but I mean, in general, I mean,
Yeah.
I think
Right.
everybody is, sometimes that people don't assume positive intent, that we want to put these
I
on
think,
every-
Mr. Chairman, at the end of the day, the people don't go into business, especially solar, they need to generate
Right.
power in order to make a profit. So for them to put up a big solar array just so they can not pay us doesn't
Makes sense.
it's not a great business model for them. So I would
That's
assume to some degree there is a positive
assume
intent,
positive
like Mr.
intent.
Johnson
in a
said.
business, for a business sense, that's why I said it.
And it's gotta be something to do with their permit from the state and the credits. I mean, they're not gonna set a benchmark and, like you just said, Jonathan, intentionally not reach the benchmark. So I think the question is, we need to know why, how they came up with a new figure, and find out if we can, they gave us a document they want us to sign. It's a negotiation. It's a memorandum. We don't have to sign it without asking questions. that we
Correct.
want Answers to.
We'll get those answers, Mr. Chairman.
I think the easy answer is we didn't ask them to.
Yeah, I asked
didn't
that
really
earlier,
ask
Mary.
them.
Right.
Could I suggest that, and I know it's comfortable for Mary to ask a question from down there, but, and that's okay to leave it there, but I would want to repeat it for the people who can't hear it,
Right. The question was,
and answer it on TV.
the question was from the resident was, why isn't somebody here from the solar company? And the easy answer is, I don't think we asked for it. I don't think it was required. And as Jonathan, the town administrator, stated, I think quite appropriately, we probably wouldn't want to have that discussion in an open forum where it potentially impacts a contract amendment. I mean, we all know what can and can't be said in open session, so. I mean, if we get written answers from them concerning the output, I mean, if they want to come in and do a presentation on the output, I think it'd have to be a narrow scope. No, I'm not going to allow, pay us more than what type, you know, paraphrasing, but, you know, if they want to come and explain, I'd certainly allow them to explain, but I don't think it's going to delve into you're not paying us what you promised, Mr. Johnson.
As we learn more about current and future technologies, we're going to have to learn
Yeah,
the ins and outs of these types of businesses. So
Well,
it's not the bad thing to ask questions and
No, not at all.
Especially
things we
the
don't
limit
know.
question.
It's easy to make up answers, but
And the good thing too is,
Agreed.
we just need, like I said, when these pilots were approved, everything was, like you said, was on the up and up, positive intent, it's done with a review of council. I mean, we just, now that we, as I said, the scales are kind of tipped against us on this one a little bit. We need to make sure all those questions are answered next time.
Well, like a lot of business relationships, you can readdress them after a couple of years to see where things stand.
I'll give you a perfect example.
Updates.
I'll give you a perfect example. We just got put over the barrel by, no pun intended, by Casella. And the amount Casella was charging us more dwarfs what the solar company wants as a reduction. But by Mr. Ruda making a couple of phone calls, I don't know, council might have had to make a couple suggestions, we negotiated an amiable settlement, beneficial for, well, not acceptable to the town in Casella, but their monies, as Mr. Paletta brought up, dwarfed what we were gonna be getting back from this solar pilot, not even close. So, we learn.
Oh, yeah, we do.
You read the fine print, and in that one there, we lucked out. No, we didn't luck out, I take that back. We had due diligence done, and we benefited from it. Good?
All right.
Town Administrator Performance Evaluation, beginning stages. If you look in your packet, everyone, and if you review the contract that we had with the Town Administrator, there are some benchmarks and there are some processes we have to put in place. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Ruda, if he's comfortable explaining what this is all about.
Mr. Chairman, this is in keeping with my contract. This is Stage A for my performance evaluations, performance planning. I've populated all the different categories in here just for you to take a look at, suggest any changes, edits, you like it, you don't like it, you want to change it, you want to make it different. I just need some feedback from the board, and then we would agree on the measurement goals. When that's completed, we'll sign it. And then Stage B, the progress review, will take place in December.
So this one here has to be completed.
This one will be completed in conjunction with the, Stage A you're talking about,
Right.
Mr. Chairman?
Is it 60 days? I forget.
We have to agree on the evaluation criteria, basically. So, yeah, if, we still have time. If you want to take another 2 weeks with it, that's fine. Or if you had a chance to look at it, we can make
I want to,
adjustments.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have a copy of the job description attached to this, and that should be part of any evaluation. I know we got a copy of it,
Right.
but I don't always take that from that meeting and put it to this meeting. So I'd like to have a copy of that attached, number one. Number two, I'd like to have us agree to a numerical assignment of points for each prosaic response. Exceed satisfaction, meet satisfaction, so on.
So, Mr. Chairman, through the chair, Mr. Joseph, there's actually a weight assigned to each different category, which the board can adjust as they see fit. Right now, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories, 20% for each
Right.
category. So within that weighted performance goal,
But that's the overall. We
right,
still need a numerical grade rather than a prosaic statement. For example, exceeds expectation is worth 4, and the next one 3, and 2, and 1.
right.
And that a perfect score would be 4.0.
Mhm.
All right, so that those can be added by whoever will do it and give you a numerical as well as the subjective feedback.
I think in the past, when we've done it, and we were successful at it, I think we individualed, right?
Yeah.
And then we cumulatived the average, came up with a net score for each category, and we released the individual numbers as we have to, but we did anyway, and anybody had a chance to discuss, like, say, for example, I gave someone a 1 and someone gave a 4. You have the right to defend your 1, you know, and because he's a town administrator, it has to be done in open.
Absolutely.
So I think Mr. Joseph's on the right path, and, you know, with the board's agreement, I think that works best, 4 being the best, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I like the format of this very much.
Right, we'll submit them individually.
Wow, Jesus. Yeah, that's fine.
Submit
I
'em
think we also, as whatever the average score was, it fell into whatever bucket. We published that too.
Right, oh, no, yeah, we gave the aggregate, and obviously you have to give your individual, and then you have the right to.
No, but I
if you
mean, meets
choose.
expectations or exceeds
Right, right.
satisfactory.
Yeah, and if you so choose, you have the right to defend whatever you.
One of the things that we have to look at, by the way, and come to an agreement as a board, is there are 5 categories. Should they be weighted equally at 20% of the overall grade? And I'm not saying they shouldn't, I haven't looked at it carefully enough yet, to be honest, Jonathan, but I might want to do 25 versus 15 or something. Because there are some things that, and that might change from year to year, based on what you see and what we see as combined priorities, you know? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, all right, so,
Yeah, this is what he wants feedback from us, right? Right?
right,
That's
I
what you
mean,
want?
Yeah, if we could get it signed, I think we'd be okay if we get it signed the next meeting, give you a few weeks to look at it, and we can, either on an individual basis or through the chair, go back and forth, and I can modify this according to what you'd like to see it be, and
I'm
we'll have
comfortable.
a more finished document for the next meeting.
It's fine.
I think so. I think, obviously, without consulting with each other, everyone take a look at it. If there's some changes that, I don't want to say minor, because not fair to say minor, but if there's changes that don't affect the end product, I guess, we should be able to incorporate and discuss at the next meeting and hopefully
I'm sure
sign
we
it.
can, yep.
Good?
Okay.
Good.
Thanks, Jonathan, for putting this together.
Next up, we have the Town of Dudley Compensation Study. This was created by an intern from Nichols College who worked with the Personnel Board, I believe, and came up with a document upon reviewing all non-unionized and non-contract positions, I believe.
Yeah.
Mr. Joseph.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move that we not vote to accept the report, but to acknowledge receipt of the report.
And
And the
then-
reason that I would do that is that, as much as I appreciate the work that was done by the students at Nichols, our student, that the database is faulty, that there should be 2 portions to the database. And this is too much of I don't want to call it scatterbrained. That's a reflection on the author, and I don't mean that. But the end that was used for towns is too much all over the place. I would prefer to see a report that's generated that takes in 2 set of data. Number 1, the 10 towns in Massachusetts that most closely parallel us in terms of budget and population, combination of the 2. And then the second set of data I would like to see is those who might be competitors for the services of our employees. And that would be any town within probably 2 doors or 2 towns away. Because if somebody's going to leave here for another job, they're not going to Swampscott or Revere or Wareham. They're going to Charlton, Oxford, wherever. And I think we ought to have that data just to see how the 2, how we compare with them, and as well as how do we compare with people with the same budget, towns with the same budget or similar. That's what I would ask. That's why I ask that we vote to acknowledge receipt, not to accept.
Mr. Johnson.
I'd agree with Mr. Joseph. First meeting, I'm already.
After a good start.
Yeah, after a good start.
Here he goes.
There's too many questions in this report. A goal of 90th percentile. Looking at per capita income is just too many questions. to draw a concrete plan to move forward. So in the end, I'd agree with Mr. Joseph to
Hold off for now?
hold off unless you want to count it as receipt.
Received.
Right.
Approved.
You know, and
Chairman, I'm actually looking only for a jumping, I want to get the ball rolling, essentially.
I mean, I'm
So this
just,
is the only document that we can actually start the ball rolling with at this point. I'm not saying you need to approve it, you can reject it, you can tell me, you can take it into advisement, but it gives me a starting point. If you want me to look at different towns, I'm happy to do that. Before I can provide the board with a cost analysis to implement any express goal, and it was the express goal of the board to try to get the pay grades a little bit more on parity with like cities and like towns, I need a starting point. So however the board wants me to proceed, that's the direction I'm looking for, but I'm going to keep putting this on the agenda unless you don't want me to, until we come up with some sort of starting point so I can begin doing a cost analysis for the board to take
I think it's great that, put this together. I know it took a lot of time. I agree with Mr. Joseph with some of the data, some of the, whatever, baseline, however you want to refer to it, because, I mean, I'm looking real quick. It looks like it's under the highway. It goes foreman, superintendent, laborer. It says Dudley pays $11 to $13.09 for the labor, and I know we pay more than that. So I think some of these figures are already, some of these figures are flawed, especially the hourly ones. And I know the other ones, the elected and the contract ones are in a range based on who they are and what their contract reads, right? I think we really need to drill down. I think knowledge receipt's a great way, that's how we handle things when we have questions. And give everyone a chance to really pass it apart and take a look. 'Cause like I said, that one just jumped right out at me. I mean, I know we pay more than $13 an hour to our laborers. I mean, Howie has one, right? Water sewer has a laborer. I know they've been in their position a long time, but hourly max is 13. That's, can't be right.
Did Mr. Joseph make a motion to accept? Was that a motion, Paul?
I moved, well, yeah, and Kerry's gonna talk too.
Oh, sorry.
I'll wait.
Nobody seconded it, I'll second it so that we can
I
keep
keep going.
going.
Yeah, good call.
All right,
I
Carrie,
don't
go
think I
ahead.
heard one either. Yeah.
Two things that I noticed quickly on this. To be honest with you, I didn't go through the whole thing. I saw enough to. Hanson. What do we have in common with Hanson? That's the first thing that stuck out at me. And the second thing is, I know tonight we've talked a lot about job descriptions with Michelle as the town administrators, posting them, what have you. I don't know, some of these are, there are large hourly salary gaps. Some of them, I mean, you go from 17 to 26. Are they all the same job? Are they all the same job description? Who knows? Like someone had said, I think it was Mr. Sullivan, we need to drill down a little bit. This is a good starting point, but I see a lot of red pen that's going to be done to this.
Good pen.
A lot of red pen.
I used the red highlighter.
Well, corrections.
I did.
You buy them in bulk, Paul?
Too, and I agree with the administrator. You want to get the ball rolling, because there are some excellent points brought up in this. I mean, I had a chance to review it last week, and part of it is, we set these jobs, we set these parameters, people get hired, and then they accept a position, and they get in it, and they realize, wait a minute, it's not quite what I thought, I'm not being compensated for what I think I should be compensated for, and everybody has a line item. As we like to say, we do the budget. We did the budget this year, and I thank the 58 people that were there that set the compensation for the whole year. But once the budget's set, people come back and say, geez, I think I should be, right or wrong, I'm not taking a position. There's a mechanism, there's a way to do it, and once it's set, it's set. And your participation is expected as the budget's being formulated. And I understand we all know the expression, the wish budget. There's a big wish budget every year from virtually every department, including the schools, and then it starts getting pared down.
Mr. Chairman, to that point, I've asked the Personnel Board, specifically Mr. Fox, now that the town meeting has approved the COLA payment, effective July 1st, there's no more money to work with in terms of adjusting pay. So I've asked him to, take requests, but not to continue through with the process until we've had a chance to discuss it, because there's no source of funding right now to make any adjustments. And if we do decide on a baseline compensation study that we want to use, we have to have money to
Right, right.
Yeah.
to make the
fair,
adjustment, so
fair.
I'd almost like the board to support that decision too, that we're gonna, for the time being, after the COLA is awarded July 1st, until we have a handle on the compensation study, not take a look at doing any more upgrades or salary increases or bonus pay or anything like that until we decide what we need in order to evenly apply it to all town employees.
Right, and hopefully, as we get the ball rolling, and maybe it's just me because I work in a different medium, but the term COLA is grossly misused when it's used. COLA is supposed to be based on a set of economic indicators. It's not supposed to be a high percent rate.
It should be based on a consumer price index, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to recommend next time that we do it like the rest of the world does.
I mean, you want to call it a percent raise, you want to call it whatever you want, but I used to, with the previous administrator and the previous administrator, COLA was grossly...
Just their raise.
Right. Mr. Johnson, then Mr. Joseph.
So, the world I come from, it's a performance-based world. So you have a job description, you have a set of goals, and you're measured against those goals, similar to what the town administrator is putting together for himself. So I'd hate to mix the messaging about overall percentages unless we're talking about a known budget that we'll have approved and then spread that bucket over
Right, bless you.
the staff.
And to be fair, with the previous administrator, they did department heads do their performance reviews for non-union, and not everybody got the same percent. There was hard documentation, and, we don't discuss it in public, but there was documentation which led to the conclusions of why some people got some and some people didn't get as much. So it's a good time to kind of reset, absorb this document, make red lines, changes, and see if we can come up with something living, breathing. Mr. Joseph.
I want to publicly go on record as thanking Rachel McDonald for the work she did.
Yeah.
I just want the board to understand that this is not a blueprint. This is at best a light blueprint. That we have two obligations at least in this issue. One, we have an obligation to our employees to compensate them fairly. And right now, we have no idea what fairly is, honestly. And number two, we have an obligation to the citizens, to the taxpayers, to ensure that any increases we provide are both fair and affordable. And that's why I ask that we simply acknowledge receipt of this and don't lock ourselves into, as Jason brought up, the 75, 85, or 90th percentile. Those are arbitrary numbers, as much as I think that the data used for this ultimately is arbitrary.
Right.
It's directional at best.
And I'm pretty sure I speak for the whole board when we all say we're not calling it a money grab. It's not people, banging down the door. And you're right. Everyone deserves to be fairly compensated. I just think we digest this and everyone's concerns get addressed. And
I've gone through it line by line.
I'm sure Mr. Ruda will get feedback from town employees that he can bring forward.
At any point, Mr. Chairman, do we want to bring in the Personnel Board just to get their opinion on the lay of the land
We can certainly ask.
from what they've been dealing with over the course of time?
Yeah, can't hurt to ask. I mean, we've done this in the past. They did their I think it was maybe 7, 8 years ago, I believe they did their own, which was another pretty comprehensive document. And some of those suggestions at that time were adopted. I
And they
mean,
were adopted. You okay with that, Mr. Town Administrator?
Sure, just let me know exactly what you'd like them to, I want to make sure that we're not on two different pages when they come in.
Is he talking about this, or?
Nope. As far as I'm concerned, that's a document that will be superseded by an appropriate database. But I will repeat it, what I said, and I usually don't mince my words. I would like to hear the Personnel Board's opinion on the lay of the land from their experience in doing the raises and the promotions and changes in jobs, and how effective are we in fact doing job description, goals, objectives, and following through on it, because I know for quite a while, it was a struggle to get that done.
That's fair.
right, I mean, the personnel bylaws, I mean, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, specifically for non-union and non-contract personnel, specifically states when self-eval is supposed to be done,
Very much so.
department eval, department head evals, it's all spelled out, and it falls on us. There's been times, as a board, what we've fallen short on some of our obligations, and we tried to correct them. So it's just incumbent, like you said, they get the right data, process it, and come up with a living, breathing document that's beneficial and fair.
Is Peter still chair?
So we're okay with where we go on this?
Yeah, we're just gonna acknowledge receipt, everyone get,
Yeah, there is a motion and a second.
yeah, motion and a second to acknowledge receipt. Any further discussion? Hearing
Mr.
none.
Chairman, I would just like some guidance from the board as to, I'm going to keep putting this on the agenda
Yeah,
until you tell me to
exactly.
stop. For in the next 2 weeks, are we going to have a better idea as to what kind of methodology you want me to follow in order to, or if you need more time, or whatever the case may be?
I think we would provide suggestions, I mean, as long as we don't,
I've stated my opinion as to what the methodology ought to be. It ought to be a database A and database B as I described them. And I certainly welcome others that can come up with additional ideas, and let's work it out.
The reason I'm pushing it, Mr. Chairman, is because it's going to be a funding item. If we get to the point where we're deciding what base pay is going to be set for all non-union employees, it's going to become a funding item, so I want to have as much,
right.
without pushing the issue until we are operating on the same page, I want to make sure we have enough time to budget for it as well.
Logic.
Well, good
Well,
thing,
I want to make sure, by the way, I want to make sure that unlike the American soldiers at Malmedy, that we're following the right signpost, all right? Not one that was switched by Germans to confuse people. Remember that. So we got to make sure that whatever we use for signpost, we've got to be able to stake our reputations on.
yeah.
Can I Google that later to refresh my memory? And I do
Yes.
remember, I do know the story, but
All right. Motion made and second to acknowledge receipt with the intent to provide suggestions or methodology to the administrator.
I think those are two separate issues.
I would acknowledge with receipt and to provide the administrator with suggestions.
I think that the motion was to acknowledge receipt, period.
All right,
If you want to instruct us to provide certain information to the town administrator, then just tell us that's what you want us to do.
take it in two parts. Acknowledge receipt. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. What would the board like to see going forward? Mr. Joseph made a suggestion. Is the board amiable to that? Would the board members like to add something else to that? Would you like to look at it first and have a chance to come back?
Want a pat in the back to spit it out?
Yeah, just get in there.
So obviously, if I try to summarize what I'm hearing, we need market analysis, whether or not that information matches or not. We need market analysis. We need to review that against the current ranges, which I believe are summarized in here for the current state, and then create a funding plan to request going forward on the budget.
Mr. Signovich?
I think the first step is, for anything we're going to do with this, I think we need data. And I think we don't do anything without the data. Because right now, I don't think, I know Mr. Sullivan pointed out, our data in this isn't
Doesn't seem to be.
accurate.
Right.
And if our data isn't accurate, is Athol, Air, Belchertown, all the other communities in here listed. And I agree with what Mr. Joseph said. We should have a set of data of communities that we could possibly lose our people to.
Be competition with it, yeah.
Because I don't think anyone's going to go to Hanson or Salisbury unless they're on vacation or something.
That's the market analysis, yes.
Right, and then the flip side is, in the big picture, to compare, just for example, a highway superintendent in a town with X number of miles, then, responsibilities to a, DPW director in another town, sometimes that can skew,
That's gotta be out, we can't even consider that.
And that's not even here.
size of budgets, who's handling accounts receivable and payable, and, how many permits does your town generate, I mean,
So to use Mr. Johnson's term, one which I'm sure that Mr. Marcy would agree with, is that we're looking for two market analyses. One, nearby towns, what are we competing with? Two, towns that have a combination of the closest budget and population to us. They may not be geographically close, but out of 351 cities and towns, we ought to be able to find 10 good ones.
I don't think we can do anything until we have that.
Mr. Massey.
So Mr. Johnson and I have the benefit of, places where we work. We have people who kind of do that for us.
Yeah,
They
no.
kind of give us the market, their range and what the recommended increase. I just did this last week. for
We
my
do
team.
too.
So we do,
Yep.
a personnel board and a town administrator, but we do have to, Mr. Chair, we gotta give him a place to start. But we need data to do that, so, I don't know how we do that. Wait, did we vote on your motion?
Yes.
All right, so,
To be fair too, in their report, there was some justification based on salary, on population and stuff, so that,
And the difficulty in finding a,
right.
yeah,
she clearly stated that.
Right.
Greg's done some of these before for a couple of the roles,
So we're not just throwing them out.
but yeah,
But you need to get this done for credit.
yeah, absolutely.
She was prescient.
Yep.
Good?
All right, can we move on? Or-
Next seat.
Administrative Secretary, OAS 6, job description, informational. Want to table that?
No, I just wanted to provide the board with the updated job description for our administrative secretary. You don't have to take any action on it. It doesn't require any action. But I wanted to at least provide it to you and give you, just give you a quick overview. She serves as the secretary to several boards, including FAA Capital Improvement. She serves as cemetery commission clerk. She maintains our streetlight inventory. She runs certain, like the streetlight program now that the replacement program, she keeps track of that, and she provides off-hour social media support, manages a lot of our social media platforms. She's our parking clerk. She's the town's parking clerk. There's been a lot of updates added to this job description, so I just wanted to put that on the board's radar screen for your general knowledge.
As we stated at the beginning, and listen, I'm not saying anything, it doesn't begin to scratch the scope of what Michelle does too. There's so much more in there that we get benefit from. If you look at many towns, there we go, for the data, similar to our size, you have a selectman secretary and an administrative secretary.
Right.
She does them both well, above and beyond expectations.
Mr.
Some
Chairman,
towns have 2 plus a clerk,
is Michelle an OAS 6 now?
Yes,
She will be now, yes.
through the chair.
What What is an OAS 7?
We don't have one.
6 is top.
We don't have one?
No.
They don't exist?
They exist, we don't have one. I didn't want to, I'm trying to leave people where they are right now until we get
And
a
I
handle on
understand
the
that, and I think that's
compensations.
wise, but this comprehensive personnel review is gonna have to be comprehensive. You know, I mean, I'm sure there's other people here in the town hall whose job descriptions exceed what is currently in writing. That's gonna be part of our comprehensive review.
Right. Yeah, so that's,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
yep. All right, next up, FAA reserve transfers for the fire department in the amount of $2,828.64. Beach account in the amount of $5,000. Police department in the amount of $8,000. Mr. Administrator, what's your request?
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna move that we
I'll skip that.
transfer those amounts out of the FAA reserve account.
Motion made to make the transfers. Seconded. Any discussion?
Technically, the FAA has to vote to approve those transfers and out of that special account. They're meeting on Monday. This is more for
Let me amend
informational.
my motion to add pending FAA approval.
So basically, we're just endorsing the requests.
Correct.
Let the FAA,
Just the chair.
any further questions? Mr. Johnson?
Why would we review it before they, why would we make a motion before FAA reviews it and approves it?
We just giving them a positive?
It's a little bit convoluted, Mr. Chairman, because we're up against the end of the year and we're up against meeting schedules. The chairman has indicated universal support for these transfers out of their account. So I think that Mr. Joseph's motion is appropriate, pending their approval, because really they're the authority that makes the transfers out of those accounts.
Right, you know, and
Their account.
going forward, I think Mr. Johnson's got a good point. You know, next time if we can get the schedules to line up a little better, maybe we can,
We
maybe we
could-
met every week. Mr. Johnson?
This question is more basic.
I did
Why?
finish, I said,
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lose
so-
again, so I didn't
yeah.
make the motion.
So my question is,
You weren't paying attention.
as I learn these processes, please bear with me.
No, you didn't last
I'm
meeting.
used to building maintenance being part of the budget for, building maintenance to be part of each department's budget if they have their own equipment. So I need to understand the need to go to different sources for that. Is the question, we didn't budget for it, or it was above and beyond the budget that was designed to cover incidental costs?
So,
Not that $8,000 isn't incidental, but
For the police.
do you want me to field the question, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Okay. There are certain budgets that were exceeded. For example, the fire department, right at the end of the year, they had exhausted their maintenance budget. So to answer your question plainly, there was not enough budget for it to begin with. So they had an issue with the radiator in one of the ambulances. The $2,828 is the bill, so we needed to transfer that amount because the budget, that line item was empty. The beach account, we've generally done a fundraiser to fund the beach. We didn't do it this year. So this was a source of funding for the beach. Lifeguards specifically. In the police department, oh, you did come up.
Why not?
You want to speak to the police
Sure.
department? Chief?
What this was we traditionally get our expense account. If you look at anything else, at the overtime and expense account in our budget is generally underfunded anyway. But this resulted from an issue where we had obviously personnel costs over the course of the year that added up, and our budget's very tight. And we recently, within the last 2 months, lost our hot water heater. And the replacement cost on that is around $8,000, and we've already had to pay that out of the budget. So that was one of the shortfalls in there, so that we're trying to recuperate that.
So that means that next time we fund a cruiser, we won't put a back seat in it.
Well,
Just put a hot water heater.
No, you don't get air conditioning or something.
Well, to be fair, from someone who has ridden in the back, they're not really a seat, it's kind of like a plastic bench.
Oh.
So the next,
At least it
Is
was,
this on?
at least it was.
this is going to the chairman, please.
Continue without finding.
That one,
What's this?
sorry.
So we're
Um,
authorizing the department heads with that to make requests for the transfer from the
We
FAA.
do those once a year, right?
But for the FAA, we're doing it once a year, but also the end-of-year transfers will come after July 1st for any bills that were outstanding, because our season closes on June 30th.
I think I was getting confused when I first read this.
So basically, we're just endorsing your action, let the FAA.
You're saying we agree to allow those
Right,
department heads.
FAA is the final authority.
Yeah.
So it's more like we're giving their
That's
blessing.
that's when we complete the vote, right?
Correct. When we complete the vote.
You have a vote, they have a vote.
So all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 You were second.
Unanimous?
Sorry.
Yeah.
When in doubt, carry over second.
Board member comments. Mr. Johnson, would you like to lead off? You want to go last?
Thank you for being kind on my first day here. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for participating, and you had obviously some well-thought-out questions, and bring a nice perspective to the board. Mr. Massey?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Jay, again. Welcome back, Paul. I think this board will continue to be a good board. We'll work well together, have our own ideas and thoughts and arguments once in a while, but we all play, each of us have a unique role sometimes, so it's fun but rewarding at the same time, so glad to have you guys back.
Sorry.
And just a note on last Monday, election, just the turnout. I was really happy to see that we had about 1,200 people show up. Last year, it was how many, Mr. Chairman?
301.
301, so 4 times the amount of people, so that was really great, and just thank you to all the candidates. You can talk about Lauren. Thanks to all the candidates who put everything out there. I know it's hard, I've been there, and I'm very proud of them all, no matter what the outcome was, so thank you for stepping forward.
Mr. Siganovich?
Mr. Marcy kind of stole my idea of what I wanted to say, but I'd like
Go
to
to you
expand
first.
on it a little. I think it's great that so many people, even without having taken papers out for seats, made themselves available for write-ins. And I know we had 3 people running for town clerk, 3 people running for selectmen. That was great. People had a choice. It wasn't just there's one person running. There was a choice. There was a reason for people to come out and to participate. And like John said, we had a great turnout. Hopefully, both of those continue. Hopefully, people continue to get involved in government and people continue to vote. That's all. Thank you.
Oh, I can't believe both you guys stole my thunder.
Oh, I
So-
can't even believe it.
I don't have any thunder left. But,
But
however,
Having said that,
I am going to say simply that I want to congratulate everybody who ran. I want to congratulate everybody who voted, but especially those people who were candidates because, as I told many of them, that I want to thank them for rekindling the spirit of democracy in the town of Dudley and creating such a huge turnout. It just felt good. It felt good to see that many people vote.
Right, and I'd like to, on behalf of the board, also congratulate Laurie Smith on her win at town clerk. 3 candidates. It's a position that does not come open too often. Matter of fact, what did someone say? We've had 4 clerks, and it was like an insane amount of time, 80 years or something like that. So we wish Laurie another 40 to keep the tradition going. I had the opportunity last week to participate at the 6th grade DARE graduation. It's truly one of the fun events I get to go to as a selectman. I thank Sergeant Poplawski for always including me. I think he started in '99 on that. I think my first time there was 2004 or 5. I think I've missed 2. I've been joined in the past by fellow selectmen. Those of you that have children that gone to the school, you've seen it. Sometimes it's boring and tedious. Sometimes it's fun and it flows. Also like to thank Mr. Massey. He represented our board well at the 8th grade graduation. The next night, I was also invited, was unable to attend. Again, that's another, I've been in the past, it's another fun event where you get to see, you know, the youth in your community, some of your friends, some of your family members, and
It's a nice tradition.
yeah, we certainly appreciate being invited. And I quickly have a letter. Would you like me to read that, Chief, from Shepherd Hill concerning resource officer? We have a letter here from Corey Gendron, who is part of the, I'll say guidance staff, but I don't think that does justice to what they do. It's concerning Officer Phil Magus. I have hope this letter finds you well. I have the privilege of working directly with Amber and Joe in the past. I also contacted you back in December of 2017 about Phil Magus and his exemplary work as a school resource officer for Shepherd Hill. I want to take the time to talk about Officer Magus again. As one of the guidance counselors, I can see firsthand what feels like every day students struggling with mental illness and low points for various other reasons. As I mentioned in previous letter, having a resource officer in the building is invaluable to the safety of our school for staff and students. Presence alone sets the tone for a safe learning environment. While anyone can provide a presence, no one is Officer Magus. Officer Phil Magus is a fixture at school. He's part of us, the faculty, the student body. Professional, dedicated, available, and engaged. Officer Magus has sat in on many meetings and assisted with many students. In my caseload, I couldn't possibly try to keep count. I know I can always count on him for anything I may need, but I also see that from students. That is what's most important. They fear him when they know they're in the wrong, but respect him because they know he wants what's best for them and to be productive citizens in our building. Thank you for sharing with us during the school year. I can't put into words how much he means to me and our entire building. I wish you and the other Dudley police officers a safe and healthy summer. Thank you all for what you do. Sincerely, Corey Gendron. I echo that. My last child went through Shepherd Hill. The previous resource officer was Officer Anise, and I think they both have provided service far above and beyond just the resource officer level. Chief.
Yeah, they do a great job, and I just want to share that with the board because it's, again, one of those newer positions we've only had for, well, now we're going on close to 10 years between part-time and full-time. But some people always question the value of these positions, and I think it's just one of those things that people see how that impacts it. As you look at a school as a little microcosm of society, that's what it is. And so we're there for more prevention than criminal action. And so I think we've probably, you can probably count the amount of arrests we've had with the schools on one hand over the last, few years even. But just the daily interaction and being able to address issues as they arise before they become bigger problems is good. And yeah, both Jimmy and Phil have done a great job with that program.
And there was one more I wanted to add on behalf of the Providence and Worcester Rail Fan Club and Museum and the United States Postal Service on June 29th at 1 p.m. at 3 Davis Street, which is, Fred likes to hang out. There'll be a celebration of the 150th anniversary of the Golden Spike. It's a stamp unveiling, which, believe it or not, people still do. They do the first day cancellations. So in conjunction with the Rail Museum, the Postal Service will be on hand, have a ceremony. They'll probably have a nice plaque for the Rail Fan, and the Rail Club will be hosting informational seminar there. They're going to be, should be a good time. We hope there's a nice turnout. It's, as Mr. Joseph pointed out the last time we talked about it, not only did they put the spike in the ground 150 years ago, but someone stole it, so hopefully our spike's a little more symbolic and lasts a little longer. Departmental Communications, Interim Highway Superintendent.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask the superintendent a question on Mr. Joseph's behalf?
Well, let me just state,
No, it's better that I do it.
let me state publicly for the record, no one has ever had to ask a question for Mr. Joseph. So I can only
This is
imagine.
my stunned face.
I can only imagine.
We received an inquiry today about the source of the mulch that's being used at the intersections.
Yep.
And the environmental impact of that mulch being used on the intersections.
That's a good question.
It's almost like you asked it yourself.
Yeah.
The source of the mulch is ground up railroad ties from the rail trail. And when we took the rail trail over from the state, Mass DEP did test them for hazardous, and they were way below the limits. so they're not hazardous, because they're so old. But that was that's the source of them.
So we
Reason
recycled,
right-
recycled.
Yeah, we're recycling them. And the reason why we're trying to do it is there's a lot of hazardous intersections people can't see pulling out, and we're constantly mowing them. So I tried this to kind of like hold the brush back to keep the visibility in the intersections a lot safer.
You know, it's interesting, I noticed your guys out in force today, and when I crossed over Hill Street, Webster was on their side of the river.
Yeah.
Same thing, they were brush mowing, pulling stuff back. I mean, that's one of the really tight choke points in town, cars are coming.
The brush mower does a good job, however, this is not the time of the year to be brush mowing because you can't really see what's underneath the brush. And we just had an incident last week where it kicked up a rock and broke a window on a car going by, so.
Oops.
Instead of going that route and keep mowing, I figured it'd be probably a better solution to get some mulch out there and calm it down, and we do a lot of heavy-duty mowing right through the winter months.
Right.
That's a good idea.
Yep. Anything else you want to report?
Strawberry Festival is Thursday,
Oh, shit.
and the highway works with the police department to pretty much let people where not to park. So just follow them, no parking rules.
Are we doing parking on both sides
Yeah.
of the street? Keith?
Yes, we have it on Center Road. Usually what we do is we usually cut traffic off coming up Center Road, send it down to Tanyard. We have no parking on Tanyard, and we restrict Dudley Hill, Dudley Oxford to a one-sided parking. So we always encourage people, there's plenty of space in the parking lots. Nichols College is always very nice to let us use their lots. So we encourage people to go and park in those lots that are there. You might actually even be closer, because some people are walking almost all the way from Shepherd Hill to get up there, so. So we encourage people to go down and find the lots, and also to look at the areas where there is no
Right.
parking.
Such a great rural tradition.
Yep.
Especially the dunk tank. I think new town administrators are usually the.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great idea.
You're the first one,
used to
generally
get it back.
speaking.
Good
Can I
idea.
make a motion on behalf
I did it
of
once.
Paul Joseph?
It's new selectmen too, as well.
Yeah,
I don't recollect seeing that in the
by
minutes.
height. We go by height, the tallest first. No, the new selectman.
Those that live in glass houses.
All right.
We got one more,
Virgil?
the end of the week is the beginning of summer already, and we're still trying to get caught up with our spring cleaning of the streets. The street sweepers chugging along out there, but that project has not been completed yet. I know we keep getting calls for streets that need to be swept. We still got a few more weeks to do with that
So
sweeper.
you still keeping that thing running with rubber bands and
Yeah,
bubble gum?
yeah.
Hey, that was state of the art like 15 years ago. I know it was 12, something like that, whatever it was.
I had to put that plug in again, yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Marcy?
Vinny, resident asked me about, I was gonna text you guys, but, Second Ave and George, sometimes we have to use the mower because, looking left and right is kinda tough coming out of there.
That was done last Thursday, I believe.
Was it? Okay.
And you do a nice job because that's never been accepted by the town. We cleaned it up for safety reasons over there.
Yeah.
That house on the corner is being sold, I think, but,
There's some bigger trees in there. I mean, it'd be better to go in there.
I
and
mean, the
change-
trees, but no, but there's like,
The brush was mowed last
all the
Thursday.
bittersweet that's starting to
Yeah.
grow up and get in the way, yeah.
We gotta be careful too, we don't wanna be cutting someone's tree down if they,
Yeah, no trees.
Yeah, it's right
just-
there, they're right on the line.
All right, just something to keep an eye on. Thank you, Vinny.
Yeah, that's a tough intersection.
It is.
water sewer?
Real quick, we've begun our test boring at the main station for the third water source, and 2 of the sources came back pretty good. So we got about 5 more to go. So it's looking good so far. So,
With that old song, 2 out of 3 ain't bad?
something like that.
Thanks, George.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
I want to convert our department heads into a tag team.
Wow,
I think they can take anybody in town.
different weight classes. Chief, you good?
All done?
Administrator, you good?
Good, sir.
Al, you good? All right, at this point, we will,
I'm going to move that we adjourn, adjourn into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 21(3), with respect to collective bargaining and litigation, whereas an open meeting may have an impact on that collective bargaining and litigation, and not to reconvene again in public.
to conclude. Motion made in second. Roll call vote.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Gary Sigenovich, aye.
Steve Sullivan, aye.
John Marcy, aye.
Jason Johnson, aye.
Hallelujah, Lord.
Okay, thank you, everybody, good night.
Let's take the phone.
All right.